Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So here's another deck profile for you guys today. This time it's on full-powered Monarchs. So Pantheism literally just came off the ban list entirely. So now we can play Monarchs completely at full power and kind of go back to what the deck used to be like. So I'm pretty excited to show you guys this deck list, especially because, you know, the deck does definitely feel a lot better now that you can see Pantheism a lot more often. And it's a lot easier to get the cards you need and be able to tribute summon the monsters you need to get to. So yeah, now keep in mind this deck does hold a lot of hidden potential. It could be viable. We'll just have to wait and see how it fends off against the current meta, because, you know, Emancipator got hit. Combo decks technically got hit because Call by the Grave is now at 1, so now they're a little more fragile. So yeah, like now hand traps are going to be like all over the place. So but thankfully this deck can actually still compete just fine, because especially with Ether, you can tribute summon during your opponent's turn. So even if you get disrupted, as long as you get the Prime Monarch into the grave and then just bring it out by its own effect, you could essentially bring Ether out during your opponent's turn in some way or another. So yeah, like I said, this deck actually has a lot of good things going for it. So let's go and get started. So 40 cards in the main deck, and the best part about this deck is that it's strictly budgeted. Does not need an extra deck whatsoever, so you can actually play this deck for real cheap. Anyway, starting off with 3 copies of Erebus, the Underworld Monarch. This card's freaking amazing. So this card basically is a Foolish Burial of Goods, and he's got a pretty good body too. So what's really good about this card is that you send any 2 Monarch Speller Traps to the grave, and then you get to bounce back a card from your opponent's field, hand, or graveyard. And bear this in mind, this does not target, so you get to essentially rip cards out of your opponent's hand if you go first. And what's also nice is that in case if you can bait out the negate of Dragoon and bring this card out, you could essentially get rid of the Dragoon and not have to worry about it anymore. So yeah, Erebus is just a good way to out certain cards because it doesn't destroy, it does not target. All right, next up, 3 copies of Ether. So Ether was also limited for a long while, but we recently got her, well, not that recent, but recent enough to finally get her back to 3. So this card basically allows you to tribute summon during your opponent's turn, as long as you have something to tribute off. But like Erebus, you can send any 2 Monarch Speller Traps to the grave, and then you can special summon 1 Monarch with 2,400 or more attack points with 1,000 defense. So it's really good. Which actually comes to my next card, Karaz. So Karaz is generally your main target for Ether, because he doesn't have to be normal. He doesn't just have to be normal summon, he can be special summon as well. You can target up to 2 cards on the field, destroy those. And then if you do, each player draws 1 card for each card that was destroyed based on whatever they control. So you basically destroy your own card, so that way you can get 2 cards. So Karaz is pretty good, and it's also another good Monarch, so why not? Now, unfortunately, he can't attack the turn he summoned, so yeah, it's not too bad. I mean, especially when you're going first, you could easily bounce this card back to your hand anyway, or just have it pop itself. So it really doesn't matter. Next, I know it's not really a Monarch, but I'm running 2 copies of Vanity's Fiend. Unfortunately, it's not searchable because he doesn't have the stats. Because his stats is 1,200 defense, so that's one of the problems. If it had 1,000 defense, then he'd be a perfect searchable target for Return of the Monarchs, but we'll get to that momentarily. And of course, 1 copy of Majesty's Fiend, which is searchable because it does have the Monarch stats. So yeah, not too bad. And that's pretty much it for the big boss monsters. We're moving on to the smaller guys. So next up, 3 copies of Idea. So you normal summon this just to get your hands on Eidos, which comes to our next card. So Eidos gives you an additional tribute summon in addition to your normal summon. So yeah, these are your main starters basically. And also Eidos, if he's in your graveyard, you can banish him, special summon out another Dia from the deck. And if a Dia hits the graveyard, you can add back any banished Monarch Speller Trap back to your hand. So Idea is really good for a recursion. And the fact that she's just like your main starter, yeah, it gets pretty nuts. And last of our vassals, we're actually running 2 copies of Mithra. It's a free special summon. Yeah, your opponent gets a token, but if you can tribute that off with the Monarch Stormforth, it almost doesn't matter. But one of the other reasons to run Mithra is simply because if she's used for a tribute summon, you essentially get to tribute summon again. So yeah, Mithra are definitely one of the best cards to run. I would definitely recommend running at least 2 copies of this. All right, so that's it for monsters. Now we're moving on to spells. For spells, of course, you're going to be running 3 copies of Domain. So everyone already knows what this does. If you control a tribute summon monster and you have no extra deck, your opponent cannot access his extra deck. Next, 3 Tenacity. So this is basically your main searcher. As long as you reveal any of the Monarchs with the correct stats, you can add any other Monarch spell or trap from your deck to your hand. Next, 3 Pantheism. Now that it's finally off the ban list, you discard a Monarch spell or trap to draw 2 cards, and then you can banish this card from your graveyard, reveal any 3 Monarch spell or traps, and the best part is they don't have to be a different name. So you could literally pick 3 domains, and your opponent's going to be forced to pick one regardless. And of course, the rest will just go back to your deck. So, and again, with Adia, this card becomes, is easily recurable and literally one of the most broken draw cards we've ever gotten in the game. So yeah, I'm so happy that this finally came back to 3. Next, 3 Stormforth. You know, it's basically a quick play spell of Soul Exchange, so definitely want to make full use of it. Decided to bump my Return of the Monarchs to 2. I think 2 is more than enough, honestly. As long as you tribute summon, you can add any monster of the corresponding stats, 2800 or 2400, with 1000 defense from your deck to your hand. For 1-ups, I'm running 1 March of the Monarchs, 1-for-1, Foolish Burial, and that's it for the spells. I'm not running Rhoda. If I do, it'll be 41 cards. I mean, it's not going to be a problem, but I didn't feel like the need to run it anymore because now that I have easier access to my cards, that's what I feel like. But again, if I just decide to run it, I'll go and run it. I mean, 1 extra card's not going to hurt the deck whatsoever. All right, so that's it for those. And now moving on to trap cards. For traps, I'm actually only running 5. 2 Monarchs Erupt. It's basically skill drain, but it doesn't affect the tribute summon monsters. The Prime Monarch. And last but not least, 1 Escalation of the Monarchs, which just lets you tribute summon during your opponent's turn as well. So yeah, if you don't have Ether, you can always run Erebus and use this card with it. And that's it for the main deck. Now moving on to the side deck. Actually only running 2 monsters on the side. Running 1 Thestalos. The reason for this card is just to get knowledge of what your opponent's playing. So if you decide to side this in, you can actually look at your opponent's hand, discard any card you want, and if it's a monster, you burn your opponent for damage. But you generally just want to use it to know what they have against you, so that way you can like discard any outs to your board or anything that could just essentially break your board. So yeah, Thestalos is just a good way to deal with that. 1 Caius, you know, for dark decks. Figured why not. Actually running a lot of 2s, well, with the exception of these. I'm running 3 Dark Ruler No More. 2 Book of Moon. Book of Moon is just really good because of the fact that not only can it act as a form of disruption, but it also is a good way to bait out negates, especially if you're forced to go second. So yeah, Book of Moon, not too bad. 2 Twin Twisters for back row. For any deck that's like extra deck reliant, 2 copies of Get Out. I'm also running some Floodgates, like There Can Only Be One. And of course, Summon Land. And that's generally it, you know. It's all pretty self-explanatory. I'm trying to make this deck as competitively as I can. So, yeah. Well, anyway, that's all I got for you guys. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will catch you guys again on the combo video.